Now, there are a variety of other approaches to the mystery of being, and almost all of them, it seems to me, tend to approach it either one-sidedly or not at all. We took the example of the cognitive behavioral therapy. I'd also like to use an example of more classical psychoanalysis, which tries to address a problem through clarification, explanation, interpretation, and also to a large extent in terms of what is rational, based on sorting out childhood dynamics that are at play with present problems or transferences onto the therapist or whomever that handicap the person. But these still, are these really looking at the mystery, the deeper issues involved in a person's transformation? Or is it still more at the cerebral level, sort of ego-dominated understanding of the problem? Now, I'm a pretty big fan of horror books and films. I wrote a book called Horror and the Holy. And I'm reminded here whenever I think about approaches that seem to bypass mystery. I think about Vertigo, Hitchcock's Vertigo. How many of you have seen Vertigo? Well, a few of you. I recommend it to anybody else who's intrigued. But it's ostensibly about a San Francisco police detective played by Jimmy Stewart, who has a fall and who's traumatized and develops vertigo from that fall, dizziness, and has agoraphobia, fear of heights. But it's very much a metaphor, clearly, in the film, for what happens subsequently, which is that he is enticed to investigate this very mysterious woman, radiant and goddess-like, Kim Novak in the film. And there's a lot of interplay between his terror of heights and that chasm below that he keeps thinking about, and this radiant blonde who is a very mysterious person because she, at least on the surface, believes that she is the reincarnation of a Spanish noblewoman who is destined to kill herself. So you can see why this enticed an average San Francisco police officer, like any of us probably. But my point is, in the film, he tries all sort of tricks and techniques to overcome this vertigo. For example, at one point, he's given a stepladder. He tries a little behavioral therapy, in a sense, to desensitize himself from the vertigo. So he takes one step up, and he's in this high apartment building, and he's fine. He takes another step, and he's getting more confident. So finally, he takes third step, a little wobbly, but then he's still saying, "Oh, nothing to it. I can manage this." He finally goes to the very top of the stepladder, and he looks down, and boom, that vertigo and that dizzy feeling rush in. And so part of the point here is, not so simple just to try to bypass it or eliminate it with a kind of, you could say, a restricted technique. And then later in the film, when Madeline tells him her dream about suffering the same fate as the Spanish noblewoman and going through all sorts of dark tunnels and ending up in her grave, he says, "If only I could find the key, the core to unlock this mystery, this puzzle, then we'll have it all solved." And she complains, "You mean so you can explain it away? There's nothing to explain." It's mystery. It's part of the dazzlement of life, I think she's conveying, or Hitchcock is conveying. So again, in some sense, almost a psychoanalytic maneuver of explaining, interpreting, finding the key. That's not going to do it. Well, I'm also reminded of a little story that Rollo May used to tell about the psychologist who appears at the pearly gates before St. Peter and he thinks he got a quick ticket to heaven, and he throws down his 70 articles and his 25 books and his 40 awards, and he says to St. Peter, here's my justification for going to heaven. And St. Peter looks at him with a furrowed brow and shakes his head and says, "No, young man, it is not sloth you're accused of, or productivity. It's nimis simplicando, oversimplification, making molehills of mountains and mountains of molehills." So there is, I think, a tendency within especially mainstream psychotherapy to reduce the question of mystery and the significance of mystery and what the possibilities that can come out of searching out the mystery of one's suffering and fear. On the other hand, I think there's a tendency in some areas of transpersonal and positive psychology in our field that tend to underscore the expansive qualities of mystery, tend to, I believe, overemphasize them. Now again, I don't want to, just paint all of these with one brush, but I do believe they're all very helpful in their own right. But I'm trying to identify trends here and concerns I have about our culture, because so many of these trends seem to relate to a kind of quick fix mentality that we have, or efficiency model for living. We want things smooth and neat and kind of tied up. I'm thinking of, for example, Roger Walsh has done some beautiful work in transpersonal psychology, meditation, and he laid out some of it in the recent American Psychologist article. But I want you to note the themes that he found most salient for meditation. Attention, sense withdrawal, which means that certain people are no longer actually sense the world very much. They don't feel it, I guess, tactily too much, because they somehow have a more pure state of consciousness. Lucidity, emotional intelligence, equanimity, evenness of mood, and moral maturity. Now, nowhere here in this list is the poignancy and struggle of living. That's my main concern with that list. There's nothing about anxiety there, and I think anxiety is key to living a full and intensive life. It's certainly key to the depth therapy process. So I would like to add that element, or at least hold that out as being significant in terms of not only a realistic life, in a sense, but I actually think an improved life. I actually think it's better to have anxiety. I think that is part of what intensifies our experience as humans. And if we're polarized, we're blocking it off. We're cutting off that intensity and the beauty of that. I think Einstein was pointing to that. Now, Dan Siegel has written very eloquently in the area of brain science. And I think we owe him a great debt for mapping out a lot of the neurological functioning that supports therapeutic work. However, when he talks about the neurobiology of mindfulness, he speaks of connectedness, coherence, and flow, which leads to a kind of harmonious wholeness, or a functional wholeness, as he puts it. And, I think that's great. We all want to be functionally whole, it seems to me, and we want harmony in our lives. But again, nowhere is there a discussion of anxiety or asynchrony. What about asynchrony? Dystonia, being a little